There's a pattern in your life that keeps showing up somewhere in how you make decisions, how far you'll go, or what you claim for yourself. And at some point, I'm willing to bet that someone handed you a framework for it. They told you that something happened or that there's a wound underneath it and to go find it and heal it. But what if that's not what's actually happening? What if the pattern isn't a wound at all? If you're new here, my name's Penny. I'm a former nurse anesthetist, board certified hypnotist, and I've worked with thousands of clients and done thousands of sessions that are all tied back to identity and how we show up in the world. The therapy culture has expanded the definition of trauma so broadly, and I don't mean the scientist, I mean the culture. The definition of trauma has been so broadly expanded that normal, everyday human experiences are being pathologized. There's this need to put a diagnosis code on something in order to be able to bill for it. So patterns that are the result of ordinary socialization, family dynamics, and developmental stages, things that shaped the identity without wounding it, are being handed a trauma framework. This is projection at its finest, and it's actively counterproductive. So when you take someone who's highly successful, a high performer like yourself, and you hand them a trauma framework for what's actually just a pattern that got ingrained at a very early age, what happens is in those vulnerable moments in a therapy setting or in an uninformed coaching setting, the identity becomes organized around wounding, which is a very different starting point than operating from a place of strength and being solution focused. That process tends to point people towards healing, which implies that something is broken, and they often don't feel broken. So, what happens is the actual mechanism of what is happening underneath gets missed, which means the approach can't work no matter how much work they do, because there is a presumption of what's happening underneath. The reality is, some patterns aren't wounds, they're just outdated, in the moment success strategies that the subconscious didn't release. They actually served a purpose in the moment that they were created. They worked in that context, but the subconscious mind doesn't let go of useful tools automatically, especially if that tool gets used on repeat. It becomes a part of the identity. So the update to change this has to happen at the identity level, not at the insight level. This isn't necessarily healing. This is not a healing process. This is a recalibration process. Healing implies that something broke. Recalibration is about something being out of alignment with what it was meant to be, and we're bringing that back into alignment. You can see those two things are very different. You can have the same person dealing with an issue, and depending on your approach to the work, it becomes something very different. My clients don't walk in feeling broken. They walk in feeling purposeful. They walk in with a goal. They walk in knowing where they want to go, but they feel like they're bumping up against something that is keeping them from fully stepping into that, whether it's in their business, their family relationships, their romantic relationships, or even their relationship with themselves, their ability to really stand for what it is that they want. In the end, there's a huge difference in how you approach what is going on with the person. I want to share with you an actual client where something happened that was not trauma. Now, I want to be very clear. We don't decide what trauma is. We don't get to decide what trauma is. The brain decides what trauma is. And the brain decides what trauma is based on its capacity to handle something in the moment. This is why comparing my trauma was bigger than yours. I actually got beat. You only got hit on the head with the slipper. That is completely non-productive. It's non-productive, and that type of comparison actually belittles an actual experience that someone else had, because the context does not define the trauma. The brain defines the trauma. But I want to give you a legitimate example of where this happens. And it was a client who was successful in their professional career. They had realized that their professional career was out of alignment for them, but they felt obligated to stay. They had this pattern of people pleasing, and it just really didn't belong. So we do this deep inner work where we're like, okay, where did this pattern start? What is the imprint driving this? And we connected with a moment that was deep, deep in the identity, where this person was a toddler and their mother was holding them, and she got a phone call and she answers the phone. While she's on the phone, her facial expression suddenly changed. And the impression that got stored in this young mind was, oh, mom's not happy. I need to make mom happy. Now, I want you to think about, our brain is wired to survive or thrive. And mimicry and mirror neurons, these are ways that we learn. When the child saw the sad face, what they thought was, mom needs to be happy, because they had already formed the pattern in their mind that when mom's happy, I know I'm good. I'm fed, I'm cared for, everything works out perfect. So to see that sad face, it was like, oh, I want to make mom happy. And that was where the people pleasing and fixer behavior started, wanting to make sure that I'm doing things that make mom happy. There was no trauma in that moment. It was purely an adaptive mechanism. And as a result of doing that work, many things unfolded in that person's life. And they now travel the world and do healing work themselves. They are no longer in the career that they were in before, and they are fulfilled, they are expanded, and they are enjoying what they've created. And this is somebody who was high achieving. They had a post grad degree. They had a position in a corporation. They were very self-aware, but this kept coming up despite their awareness, despite their work with other healers, despite their work with other coaches. And that is because this was something that got embedded in the level of identity, because it simply became a repeating pattern that they wanted mom to be happy. So this is something that did not happen in a negative context. It happened in a positive context. Oh, I want to make mom happy. I enjoy making mom happy. But later, when it didn't fit the context, that pattern continued. Back in 2019, 2020, when everybody on social media was screaming from the rooftops, if you procrastinate, it's trauma. If you people please, it's trauma. If you do all of these things, it's trauma. If you had an unpleasant emotional experience, it's trauma. I have held this position that not all trauma is created equal. We don't decide what trauma is based on the context of the experience. It's whether or not the brain has the capacity to handle what's happening in the moment. And if something exceeds the brain's ability to manage it, then what happens is within the brain. It has nothing to do with what happened. And maybe I'll do another video and I'll share some examples of some clients that had something really big and ugly happen, and there was no trauma there, and people who had something that was, oh, what? And that became a trauma. But that's another video. But really what I want to say is that if you're dealing with people pleasing, procrastination, imposter syndrome, feeling you're not good enough, that you can't trust yourself, if you're hitting a financial ceiling, right, and you don't buy into the idea that you don't feel worthy of that next level, chances are what you're dealing with has absolutely nothing to do with trauma. It's belief imprints. It was a mental framework that was given to you. And when you stop orienting your awareness and your insight around attempting to uncover something that most likely isn't even there, when you approach your own patterns from a place of recalibration rather than healing, something will shift in you in the way that you show up to do the work. You're not excavating, you're updating, because the mentality between the two is very different, especially into whether or not you can move into self acceptance of yourself. It's a completely different energy, and it changes what you're capable of. It changes what you can achieve because you're not carrying the weight that you have this story that something inside of you must be broken and you just can't see it. Instead, what you're carrying is the clarity that there's something inside of you ready to expand, and you just need to tune and calibrate to it. So the question is, what if the thing you've been trying to heal isn't actually a wound? This is the distinction that sits at the center of what I do in Catalyst Recalibrated and with my one-on-one clients. We don't focus on wound work. We focus on identity level recalibration. If you're past the point of thinking that you need to go back and find some unhealed wound, then you're ready for what's actually next. And the details are below in the description, because not everything is a wound. And if you have not felt aligned with that, then most likely you're correct.